Hey, do you want to build a stronger family, create a better life? Well, that's what Divorce with Heart is all about. It's a show where I guide you along your divorce and co-parenting journey using the heart's wisdom, intuition, and legal expertise. So sit back, take a deep breath, relax. My name is Gina DiPrima. Let's get started. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me. This is Divorce with Heart, Conscious Co-Parenting, episode 32. And I'm going to do things a little bit different this time. I'm going to start off with questions that have been coming through on Facebook, email, etc. And then I'm going to dive back into a little bit about what I was talking about last time, and that's growing through gratitude. But this time, taking a different perspective and applying it more to the situation of, new girlfriend, boyfriend, step parent, significant other, the other person, the other person around your kids. That's not the parent, right? So I want to apply it to that because that's also a real challenging area for a lot of people. And especially again, around this time of the year, around the holidays. Of course, this is the time that we get together with our loved ones. And oftentimes, if people are paired up, they're with their significant other, right? So I want to address that too. But first, like I said, I want to jump into things a little different and go to your questions. And again, if you don't know, we used to be live. So I was here to take callers live. Now we're doing pre-recorded episodes, but I'm still more than willing and able and interested and wanting to help and wanting to answer your questions. So what you do now, instead of calling in, is you just message me through Facebook. You can post it in the Divorce with Heart Facebook group, or of course, just, go on the Messenger app at Gina DiPrima or DiPrima Law. You could find me at, it's pretty easy. And just send me your question. Also, email works, divorcewheart@diprimalaw.com. And again, so that's how we do it. So let's see what I got here. Okay. This comes from Karen. Let's see. She says, I'm currently married, but I'm thinking about a divorce. We've talked about our relationship and, where it's, I'm kind of trying to paraphrase, where it's not working and wanting to work on things and go to counseling. But I'm not really sure that that's what I want to do. In the end, I most likely want to be getting a divorce. My issue and problem is that I'm afraid as soon as I tell him that I want a divorce, that he will act irrationally and mad and do something stupid like pull our kid out of school. Our kid goes to a private school, and I'm afraid because he acts irrationally that he'll pull him out of the school. And this is a threat that he has made in the past. What can I do? Okay. Well, okay. So you're not divorced yet and you're just thinking about it. And really what it comes down to is you're afraid of the reaction and what your husband may or may not do and what can he do specifically when it comes to your child's enrollment in school. And first, I don't know all the ins and outs of public education law or what the school's policy is or, what's required at the school you're referencing in terms of enrolling a child or taking a child out. So I'm going to pull that kind of analysis out of my response. Okay. So I'm going to look at this more from just what my experience is in the world of a divorce lawyer. Okay. Right now, there is no court order. There's no court order in place because you're married. So, the law more or less is going to presume that if there is no court order, then you're acting when you're a married couple along the lines of what would be legally termed joint custody after the fact, meaning that when you're a married couple, I think it's presumed that the major decisions that are going to affect your child's life education, where he goes to school, things like that, health types of decisions, medical procedures, the major stuff. It's presumed that there's a mutual agreement, or at least a conversation and a consultation and some kind of a discussion, right? That then leads to a mutual decision, or let's face it, somebody decides. And when you're married, it's like, somebody's vote just wins I hate to say wins the argument. It's not always an argument, but somebody's vote is the one that matters, right? I guess that's the way we could say. So when you're in this situation, it's not really in the court's hands. So the question is, can he legally or legally not do that? I don't know that there's anything that to say that he legally can't do that, in the sense that there's a court order that says that he can't do that. Now, whether or not, the school policy allows him to do that or anything else, that's a different question, right? I can say this, that let's just say, for the sake of the example in this question, that, he does find out, or you do tell him you want a divorce, and that's the very first thing he does is he goes down there the next day and he tries to, remove your child from the school. Well, I don't know how realistic that really is, because you have to have somewhere else for the child to go, because a child can't just be out of school, right? There is a law that would prohibit that, homeschooling aside, and there's a process in order to homeschool too. But you can't just have kids just hanging around doing nothing. So I don't think that it would be as easy or as practical as what the threat sounds like, right? I think there would have to be a process made. If he was going to actually pull him out of school, he would need to have a plan and need to have him probably already set up to be enrolled somewhere else, right? And that, at the very least, would, I would think, require some kind of dual consent, again, just as a matter of school policy. As soon as you're checking those boxes that you're married or living together, etc., I think that would, of course, prompt some kind of inquiry or some kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but some sort of questioning as to consent from both parents, right? And, again, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think to be taking every precaution that you can would include probably at least putting the school where your child is currently attending, putting them on notice. And I don't mean necessarily you got to tell them all the details. Like, oh, I think I might want to get a divorce, and I'm going to tell him and he might go crazy and pull him out. I'm not saying that. But put him on notice, or at the very, very least, call them and ask them what their policies are, because maybe that's all you'll need to know to set your mind at ease, right? And maybe that's all they need to know or hear to kind of have a seed planted in their mind that something's going on here, right? Because that's what it's all about. You just don't want it to happen like this knee-jerk thing or this pull-the-plug thing where all of a sudden he's in one day, out the next. I really think it's impractical. I think it's more of just a threat than a real potential reality. But again, it's good to take precautions, right? Now, if he were to be successful, now I can tell you again, now the courts would have something to say about that, or could have something to say about that, because again, our system is designed to be more reactive instead of proactive, right? So it's sometimes, unfortunately, something has to happen first that's not good, like all of a sudden he's pulled from his school, in order for the court to be able to really do anything. And the reason why I say that is because at that point, and of course this would assume that you're now going forward with the divorce, but at that point, okay, you can make an application with the courts. Here in New York, it's called a motion, but you could make an application to bring the issue before a judge and have the judge make a ruling on it. If nothing else, to say that the child needs to be re-enrolled, right? You can at least try, is what I'm saying. Nothing's ever guaranteed. I tell people this every day in my practice, that in this world of divorce law, and family law situations, nothing's ever guaranteed. It's just not a black and white world. It's just a whole lot of gray. And so unfortunately, and I tell everybody this in my practice, when I have to answer questions, more often than not, you're going to hear as part of that answer, it depends. Because it's never one way or the other. It's all about it depends. Depends on the factors. And it's up to, ultimately, if you're in court, it's up to a judge to weigh all the factors and then make a decision. And it's never based on one. So I hope that that answers your question. Can he do it? Maybe, right? It depends. Is there anything legally in place that says that he can't? No. But if he were to do it, could you then bring something before the courts? Well, absolutely, right? Because at that point, under your example, he would only do it after you're telling him about the divorce. That means your mind is made up, right? And you're going down that road. If it's before that and you're talking about, okay, well, we're just married and he does it and now what? That's a little bit of a different scenario. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see. Now this one, I'm going to read. I've got to go to Facebook for this one. Dan says, and I'm going to paraphrase some of this as well, but hopefully I'll hit all the high points. Okay. So Dan asks, he says, my ex dated a guy for 6 years before me. She was friends with the guy's mother before they dated. She's actually who set them up. She used to go over and hang out with his mom and his sister. In the beginning, I didn't have a problem with it. It was still a little odd to me, but it wasn't until I found out that they were supplying her with marijuana that I had a problem. I told her that she needed to cut ties with them. I told her that they were not good for her or our relationship. She said I wasn't going to pick and choose her friends. She refused to cut ties with them and said none of the guys she had ever dated in the past had a problem with them. I think I was looking out for her and her marriage. I just wanted to get some other opinions. And, I had followed up with Dan and I asked him for clarity here. Was the issue really for him? Was it one about the marijuana being supplied? Or was it really an issue that she was hanging out with her ex's family, right? Her ex's sister and her ex's mother, because it makes a difference. At least it makes a difference for me. Short answer is that for him, it was really more of an issue of them getting her involved with things that he didn't feel was really good for her. Supplying her with the marijuana really was what was bothering him. She started drinking heavily and getting involved with the drinking and the smoking marijuana, which was really bothersome. He didn't want to see that happening to her. He wanted something better for her because, naturally, as what happens in close relationships, we start to learn about our partner's history. And she had a history in her family with these kinds of behaviors. And of course, the road then wasn't good. And he didn't want to see that happening for her. He also mentioned how she had a job that could be very easily jeopardized, right, by her use and her choices. So that really makes a difference in how I answer that question. And first, I want to say, I totally get where you're coming from. Even if your response to me was, I'm mostly aggravated because of, the connection to the ex-boyfriend, I would totally get that too, because it happens a lot, right? That's how people, that's their initial reaction. Now, and if that is what you would have said to me, I probably would have answered something like, well, I think it's better for you to instead focus on who she's relating with. And rather than that, focus on growing your own relationship, right? Like keep the focus in your own house, focus on strengthening what you have, because the stronger what you have, the better your relationship is. Then, of course, there's just less, there's always potential threats, but there's less of an opportunity for a threat to have any kind of impact. And when I mean threat, I mean like another person, an ex-boyfriend, right? Because if you've got it good, then you've got it good. Let's face it. So that's probably what my response would have been, something closer to that. And, it's interesting too, because in your question, you're posing it as though you and she had already broken up. So I'm assuming here a little bit that this had something to do with that. And, you were concerned about the ex. So for other people out there that really, where the answer for you would have been because, my girlfriend or whatever is associating with her ex, my answer would be what I had just stated, focus on what you got instead of that. Because focusing on that is going to drive her to think that you're controlling, right? And insecure. So focus on what you got and build up what you have. But since your answer was the marijuana, and that's what you mentioned, I understand. I understand completely. And again, in reading your question, I get a sense that this really had probably a lot to do with, and I'm guessing here, but probably had a lot to do with your relationship ending. And what I can say to you, Dan, is that, sometimes, right? Sometimes it's just really hard to be able to see people that we love making decisions or, acting upon poor choices, right? That it's easy on the outside to look at them and judge them. And especially in your example and with your inner knowledge and insight about who she is and knowing her in such an intimate level and knowing her family and her history, right? It's sort of a logical thing. And it's easy to conclude and see that her doing that is probably not a good choice and probably not going to land in a good place. And there's a whole lot of risk involved. And it can just be really hard to step away and allow the people that we love the freedom to make their own choices and allow the people that we love the freedom to fall flat on their face if that's what's going to happen. Right. And it's hard and it hurts because you can see the end and what the possibilities are. But the reality is that it's important because we never know what their story is. We don't know what it is that they're meant to gain through this experience. We all are here. We're all growing. We're all learning and we're all evolving every day. And there's something in it from her. And that's what free will is all about, right? So I can understand why you would be upset and why you would want to intervene and why you might want to try to control her or say, don't do this, don't do that. And I get it. And if I were in your shoes, quite honestly, I'd probably do the same thing, right? I probably would. But I just think it's important to also remember in these circumstances that element of free will, right? She ultimately has the choice to decide. She's got to decide her own fate, how she's going to live and how she's going to act, how she's going to think. And again, if what's so important to you is your relationship with her, then you're going to focus on that and cultivating that, right? And how your relationship with her is serving you, rather than focusing on her choices and her behavior. All right. Now, in gathering from your overall question, again, it sounds to me that it didn't exactly work out. So I want to encourage you, especially if you listen to the last show where I'm talking about going back and recalling an incident and that kind of thing to build the gratitude and look at it from a different perspective. I want to encourage you, Dan, to do that. Okay. And when you do it, I want you to look at it and also ask yourself, was I trying to save her? Who else am I trying to save? Where else have I been engaged with somebody in a relationship with somebody that was, built around, centered around, or somehow had this element in there of me trying to help? How many exes are there that you've helped, that you've tried to save, and that you've tried to save all the while kind of sacrificing yourself? Because that's really what I was gathering and sensing overall when I was looking at your question and kind of reading into it and your answer. And I think really that's the deeper message here for you. And I think that's what you really need to know and take away from this, is that there's something in this whole experience for you to learn and grow from too. And that just might be you looking at yourself and knowing, you've got this great big giant heart. You're a loving person, a compassionate person. And maybe sometimes that means that you sacrifice yourself to save somebody else. And maybe it's time, right, that you start putting yourself first. stop self-sacrificing. So, and that's just what came through to me as I was reading your question, and I wanted to pass that on to you. I hope it makes sense to you. Of course, I'd love to hear from you in the Facebook group. And as I mentioned at the top here, of course, you can message me or send me an email. But I really wanted to just leave you with that there. And again, like I said, I would probably have done the same exact thing, but there's always something to grow from it. I don't think I have much time left to dive too deep into this gratitude. But again, if we are looking at growing and transforming through trying to develop a sense of gratitude, and if we can apply this now to the situation of the girlfriend or the boyfriend, okay, how would we do it? What would it look like? So first, if you remember from the last show, you've got to recall the incident, surface level incident. Don't dive too deep. Something that really irritates you, irritates you just enough, but not too much, about the girlfriend or the boyfriend being around your kids and their involvement in your now life, right? And I wanted you then, second step is step into that observer role, but observing it from a higher sense of yourself, observing it from this point of view where you're guaranteed, all the money's on it, that no matter whatever happened here was meant to happen here because it's best for you, right? And then I want you to watch the show. Watch the show from that perspective, asking yourself questions of what is it, right? What do you need to see? What do you need to take away? So what would this look like? Okay, let's just dive into that energy for just a quick minute here, I think it would look like this. If you're recalling the girlfriend, maybe you start in your mind, you can't stand her. You can't stand her. She's always around. Who does she think she is? Now she's controlling him. Everything that he does, she says it first. She's trying to stick her nose into everything. It's none of her business, sticking her hands in everything. She's trying to control him. She's trying to control my kids, trying to discipline my kids. She wants to be mother of the year now. She's taking my daughter out to get her nails done, get her hair done, buying them things at the store. I mean, what is it? Why can't she just parent her own damn kids, right? Why can't she just do her own thing? Why does she have to always be involved and always around and always in my life? Why, right? And that's where you start. I think that's where the emotional level and the mind game and the emotional thing starts, right? And of course, the whole point here is we want to look at these things from a different perspective, because it's only when we look at things from a different perspective that we can change our experience with it and therefore our future to follow, right? So let's think about it. You're in that energy state, maybe that's you, or somebody, you can imagine it, okay? And what happens? Your son is sick at school. He's sick at school. He needs to be picked up now, right? And his father is at work and you're at work, and neither one of you can get there really as quickly as the girlfriend can. So dad asks the girlfriend to go, and girlfriend, of course, is also in a relationship now with this child, loves this child, cares for this child. And of course she's going to go. Doesn't want to see him sitting there in the nurse's office in pain, not feeling well. So she goes, and she's there to pick him up. And what happens in my example, right? In my example, mom learns of this and goes berserk because she's angry. She can't even find that sense of gratitude yet, right? That's why we're doing this. She says, no way in hell is she picking my son up from school. It's not her kid. She's overstepping her bounds yet again, right? That's what could happen from that place of negative energy. But if we could restructure and reframe some of that, does she still make the same decision? I say no. And that's the point. That's why we restructure. That's why we reframe. I think instead, right, of getting angry, no way can she pick up my son. Now what happens? He sits in the nurse's office in pain, not feeling well, wanting to be home, wanting to see just a friendly face, not the nurse, right? Now he's sitting there stuck because mom's angry, mom's at work, dad's at work. Now what? If she could have thought from a different perspective, maybe she could see, you know what? I'm so lucky that if I can't be there to care for my babies, somebody else can. I'm so lucky that at least there's somebody there that can see my son when he's there feeling down and out, that, is familiar, that can bring that sense of warmth and caring to him, right? It's not a stranger. It's not somebody, removed. It's not an Uber driver. I mean, that could happen too, right? It's a familiar face and somebody that cares. Isn't that something in the equation to be grateful for? Okay. And so as you try to look at an example like this from a new perspective, new shoes, new eyes, right? That's the kind of thing that you should start seeing, that I would want you to see, that I would hope that you'd see. Okay. You'd start to see the little things that make sense, the little glimpses of the things that you can be grateful for toward that person. Okay. And you've got to let yourself see it. You've got to be willing to drop the anger and let yourself see it. So now we've got, thank goodness that she had the flexibility in her schedule where she could go pick him up. Thank goodness that she was there and that she cares enough about my kid to take time out of her day and time out of her life to go and care for him, right? Because she didn't have to do that. And my son is better off for it, right? He's better off. Thank goodness that at least I know that when I'm not around, there's other people around that are going to do right by him, or at least do their damnedest to try. And that's really what matters. That's really what matters. So if you can get yourself to kind of re-examine the situation, you can start to develop this greater sense of gratitude. And the bonus here, the bonus for you, is that the fallout of this practice, again, it's going to help you and it's going to help your kids. Your kids are going to feel better, right? They're not going to feel anymore like they're stuck between two teams. They got to pick a side. They're not going to feel like they have to pick a team. They're going to feel like they're okay to be themselves. And it's okay to show mommy that they're happy and they like the girlfriend and she's kind of cool too. Never going to be like mommy because nobody's like mommy, but it's okay, mommy. It's okay, right? That's kind of the point. So the fallout in practicing this is good for you. It's good for them. It's good for everybody. All right. And it's essential, really, to your future happiness, because, holding on to that anger is not going to get you very far. So I hope that you can keep this in mind again as you're going through these times when you're invited to the holiday gatherings, the dinners, things like that. And you know that your kids are there and they're not with you. And it's a tough time. I know that. It's hard to not be with your kids. And it's hard to imagine that while you're not with your kids, they're over there and maybe they're having a good time, with him or her. But you're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. And the best thing that you can do for yourself and your kids during this time is don't let your anger take over. Don't let the anger take over. Don't let the spite take over. Don't let the hurt and pain take over, because really that's what's underneath it all. Instead, help yourself, help your kids, challenge yourself to try to heal and grow through this process. And the best way to do that, again, is look at it from a different point of view, right? Rewrite it. Look at it from a different point of view. So your next step is a different step, right? Because you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same thing. I think we all can agree on that. So, I thank you for joining me. Again, if this makes sense to you, if you enjoy the show, I'd love to know that you're out there. I'd love to know that you're listening. The best way to do that is to leave me a review or a rating on iTunes or wherever you're listening. That's how I know that, I'm not just sitting here by myself yapping to a microphone. So let me hear from you, please. And join the Divorce with Heart group on Facebook. Join the conversation. Let me know how this practice of growing through gratitude is working for you. Let me know your challenges. And of course, if you have a question or an issue or something going on, you want me to explore it, let me know. I'll even explore it energetically if I can, like I did here for Dan. It all depends on what comes up. Thanks so much. Have a great week. Enjoy the holidays. Thank you so much for joining me today. Come back next week and be sure to visit my website at dpremalaw.com to book a call, or let's connect on Facebook at dpremalaw, where you can join my group for more support. Please remember that the information shared is for general and entertainment purposes only, and that by calling in or messaging me, we are not creating an attorney-client relationship, and my advice is not intended to be legal advice. For specific legal advice, please contact a lawyer in your jurisdiction.
This show is brought to you by inflowradio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.